Hi, my name is Christine Rucker, and I'm the owner of CMR Art Studios and Collaborations. I'll be starting a video series interviewing artists and going into their experience and what it's like for them to work in a visual journal and how that relates to work outside of their journaling practice. So, the first artist I'll be interviewing is Marlowe Emerson. Marlowe is a mixed media artist who creates large-scale abstract paintings using acrylic and collage techniques. Her process is centered around observing the mental processes of painting and the value of abstract expressionism as an intuitive practice. Combining paint with everyday materials on the canvas, she works to create layers of meaning and personal narrative to build a connection with the viewer. She currently teaches abstract painting at the Virginia Museum of Contemporary Art in Virginia Beach, Virginia. In my interview with her, Marlowe's visual journal is described as her canvas. She takes observations from her line of sight and brings it to the canvas instead of a notebook. During this interview, she talks about moments that capture her attention and how her style changes and is a reflection of the environment she is in. Over time, her style moves from observation to a more personal story, abstracted, and she does this by allowing herself to change. We also talk about privacy in our journals and sneaky children reading their parents' journals. So a quick little plug. Marlowe is also, she has an art show at Offsite Gallery in Norfolk, Virginia. That'll be up until this Monday, January 11th. Be sure to check out her show and enjoy this interview with her.
So I started out with this slide because this is kind of the intro that I normally give when I use this slide as my introduction, because this is the first art show I did when I was 25, and I like for people to see how I started out because it's like kind of a evolution. You see the evolution because a lot of people I think that they have to make like one kind of art and that's it, and you're not allowed to change, you're not allowed to evolve, or you are like losing your message or whatever. So, and that's not true. I think we all have different incarnations. And as far as the visual journaling thing, I think you can see when you start at the beginning and look how my work has evolved. It's all from a very kind of personal point of view and about what was going on in my life at the time and how I was affected by my surroundings and how I sort of responded and to that and recorded it in different ways. And it was I'm really glad to be having this conversation because I really didn't realize how much because not all art is necessarily visual journaling. And I think that what I was doing without necessarily being aware of it was very much akin to that. So when I started out, I was very interested. My mom is Native American, and um, I was very drawn to not only like the color palette, sort of Southwestern thing that was very popular in the 90s, but also like I painted a lot of furniture and things that you could just kind of use geometric shapes on because I was really interested in sort of symbols and shapes and what they meant and making things. That was kind of my first way that I dealt with abstraction, was kind of assigning meanings to shapes and things. But also this was very much because I was very homesick and I missed my family. This was in France. I'd moved to France right after graduating from college, and this was kind of my way of connecting with my family and my roots and my mom. And so it was very, I was learning to paint, but at the same time, it was very therapeutic. And also it stood out, it made me definitely stand out because in the south of France, everybody is painting, lavender fields and olive groves, and nobody had seen anything like this before, was doing anything like this. And so it was kind of at least they definitely knew me as like the girl that was painting the Indian stuff. And then I moved back to Virginia. So I moved back to Virginia Beach, and my palette immediately changed. Obviously, everything was gray and blue and brown, and suddenly the color just didn't make sense anymore. It was because I was really kind of very, very influenced by nature and by my natural surroundings, by the state park, by the beach, and where I spent a lot of my time. And so I really started kind of absorbing all of that. Um, and this is, people always ask me why I do collage or mixed media. And it's because I just always had this feeling that like, I never got what I wanted out of paint. Like it was too limiting, or I always felt like there needed to be something more. Maybe that's my, not, where my own limitations with paint, not the medium, but in any case, these are photos of seashells that I would find on the beach that I would print out and cut up and collage into the painting. So this is when like everything really started to have a personal story and a layer of my own experience into the piece. Like this is another example where this was winter in the beach, of course, is really kind of depressing, but these were photos that I had taken of the tree that I saw outside my studio window in different seasons, and kind of collage them into this more wintry scene. But it's all the things that I was seeing, my own personal experience with nature and the seasons. And same thing here, I started just, again, these are things that were in my line of sight. And this was, these vases, I moved from place to place a lot, and these always kind of came with me. And, but when I wanted to paint them, I ended up collaging in the clouds. These were pictures that I used to take when I felt trapped in a job. I would take pictures, like a day job or whatever. I would take pictures out of the window of the sky. And so these were all of like the clouds that I would look at from my office window or from my, store window or whatever. And this sort of gave me this sense of freedom. And that kind of got, collaged into this, with the, there's a picture of the open road and all this stuff. And so it was kind of moving from place to place, but but also confinement and these different things. And so this is where I really started trying to I wanted to paint my personal experience, but not in a way that was, still life per se or landscape per se, but I was really trying to add a layer of myself in there. And I think that's, how this style emerged. And then I moved from the beach to a house with a garden, and everything suddenly was garden related. So that's how that switched from the colors and the shapes and the forms. Now I was working with a lot more botanical looking things. Again, things that are in my line of sight, things that are part of my everyday experience. But at this time, this is when I really started to try to take steps back from reality. So it's that dialogue between your inner and outer worlds, the things that you're seeing and the things that you're feeling, that I think is really interesting about abstraction. And I was trying to see how far I could get. Make this a little smaller. So this is where I started to kind of back away as much as I could. You can still see the floral forms, but where I was trying to kind of get away from it. And these were a lot of kind of the things that are collaged into here were a lot of scribbling that I did from different experiences, sketches that I did, sketches that I got from other people, just anything that I could layer in there that would give it texture. And this one is called Do You Like Butter? Because it reminded me the yellow of that experience when you're a kid, of when they hold a buttercup under your chin and you're supposed to tell whether someone likes butter, and of course it's always the same, but you're a kid and you think that's the greatest thing in the world because of that weird shade of yellow. And I was really trying, it sort of, huh?
And the
Yeah.
reflecting, it's fascinating how color changes, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And but it really kind of represented me, trying to find that that childlike aspect to what I was doing, the more spontaneous, trying to be as spontaneous as possible and let go of of what I was seeing. And then, so then they started taking on this like larger form, because ultimately I was really trying to tune into like, what am I trying to create for other people? I know what I'm trying to create for myself, but and all I could think of was the experiences that I had when I lived in Washington, DC, when I was in college. You know, the halls of museums were like the places that I spent my day trying to, because I just, it was the only sort of joy that I got out of anything when I was in college. And a lot of the large scale abstract paintings that just sort of you get immersed in, and you get to have these sort of really personal experiences with. That's kind of what I started really wanting to give to other people. So you can see the scale of that one. That one was in a show last year. And this is a little bit of you can see where my studio space is in my garage in the back of my house. It is never this neat as you see on the right. It's more of, and this is, I definitely don't look like that when I paint either. It's definitely posed. These were, I'm sure someone asked me for shots of this, because it's usually a hot mess when I'm like running around covered in paint and everything's all over the floor, ripped up paper and everything else. And
Good memories.
so
Hear that.
yeah, exactly. So my next step, so I was creating these kind of large scale things. And again, they all have bits and pieces of kind of everyday life in them. And an element of story, which that's another thing that's interesting to talk about abstract art, is the ideas of narrative or lack of narrative that exist, and whether that comes from the artist or comes from the viewer. And those are all some like interesting things to kind of think about in these, or when I was making these, I thought a lot about that stuff. And where I'm at now with it, these were all very, you can see the busy, you can see the complexity. And I was like, what if you like just chilled out for a little bit? Like, what if you just like calmed down a little bit and tried to give it a little more space and try to give it a little more breathing room? And so that's what I'm trying to do now. Like I said, I always have this sort of place that I'm trying to go with it. And before, it was kind of trying to let go of whatever was visual representation. And now I'm trying to let go of having to have it be so dense and complex, and allow it to be more simple, and allow it to have room to breathe, allow the shapes in there to have room to breathe. But there's still that element of personal experience. A lot of some of the blue shapes in here are bills that I couldn't pay. I was like, just slap it on there, like just make it part. It's all part of the,
Like the actual bill is on there.
Yes. The you get that stuff in the mail, and you're like, well, what is it good? This is a cool shade of blue. This is a really great way to use this. Let's get something positive out of this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, try it. It's great. And these are sketches that I had made of like what things felt like in my brain. And so I've sort of like put them in there. And these both I painted at the beginning of this year. And this one, I really, I struggle with winter here. And I really found myself, painting was helping me, because I was painting it was kind of different, because instead of what I would, whereas before I was painting what I was seeing visually and, outside around me, this was really, I started going to a place where I'm like, I'm not even painting what I see anymore. I'm painting what I want to see. I'm painting what makes me feel good. I'm painting what makes me feel better. I'm definitely not painting what's in my line of sight, but this is what I wish was in my line of sight. This is called Summer House. And I'm like, I wish I was sort of like looking out over the pool, like somewhere, but I just needed vibrant colors. It was sort of like painting what you need like in the dead of winter in Virginia Beach. It's like, please, I need some sunshine, and the only way I'm going to get it right now is to paint it. So, and then I just wanted to wrap it up with this quote from Kandinsky, which you've probably heard before, but the artist must not only train his eye, but also his soul. I really like this quote because it's kind of what I frame my classes around, because I feel like um, lots of people can learn. You can learn technique anywhere. You can take painting classes. You can learn oils and acrylics and perspective and all kinds of things. And those things are great. But where do you learn to train your soul? Where do you sign up for a class for that? And I think that that's kind of what people are looking for when they want to like make a great painting. Like, how do I make a great painting? It's like, well, there's more that goes into it. And I like kind of digging into what those things mean with people, and kind of watching their aha moments and the things that they learn and the things that I learn from them. So, and I think visual journaling is one of those ways that you work on training your soul. So
Thank you. That was amazing.
yeah,
And thanks for sharing your art too.
good, good, good.
I love that you brought up a closing note about the soul, because you mentioned that your paintings sort of are your visual journals, and I know that usually a lot of artists I've observed when they're journaling, the idea starts with an observation, and then it moves into these sort of like grander, just different concepts are sort of generated from those
Mhm,
observations. And I love seeing the trajectory of your painting history, sort of reflecting that. It's
mhm.
like a shift in intimacy.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's about kind of, again, allowing yourself to change. Maybe I'm the only one that has a hard time with that, but
Mm.
you know, I don't know. You got to be willing to throw stuff out there and try different stuff and take risks. And I think a journal is a comfortable place to do that. A lot of people get hung up on like, well, I don't want to mess up this canvas, type of thing. And if you're in a journal, it's your book, and if you don't like the page, rip it out. I mean, I can imagine anyway. I'm not good at visual journaling for the opposite reason. It's like, well, what if I do something really great? And now it's
Oh,
stuck, and it's now.
no, and I love the comment that you made about visual journaling, and that usually people start there and then get bigger. But how
Mhm.
how did you just how did you get to the place where you can just start being so open and you might call it trustworthy or vulnerable
Mhm.
or courageous on a canvas?
Mhm. That's a good question. I think because I think it was letting go of starting with a plan, like you're saying, like a lot. It's okay, like, and it's okay. Lots of people are comfortable with this, and it works for them with starting with an idea. I don't really know ever what's going to happen. Um, I I just start laying down stuff. And then I get information back from that, and then I respond to it. And it took me a really long time. I mean, you can see kind of in the trajectory, but that like, a lot of that is letting go of visual of representation, of letting go of representation. And that's one of the things I talk about in my class of like, how do you take steps backward? If you want to make abstract art, it's for a reason. You came to that for a reason. Um, so what is it that you have to let go of? Like, it's just like you have to keep letting go and letting go and letting go, and sort of breaking down your attachments. It's a great Buddhist practice too. um, so it's a great way to and that's kind of how I think, that's kind of how I think about it, because I think about the fact that it's just you learn so much about yourself, and I've come to value that more, that experience of the time you spend painting and everything that you learn when you're doing it, as being more valuable than the canvas or whatever you end up making. I think when you open yourself up to that first and realize that that's really the reason that you're there, you might get a great canvas out of it, you might not, but the time that you spend is what's the most valuable, I think. So
I love that. I love that a lot.
mhm.
Yeah, and that's perfectly transferable advice for someone that wants to work in any scale.
Yes, yes, definitely.
So, do you have a journaling habit? And if you do, how often do you do it?
Yeah, I do. I've sort of, I started keeping a journal when I was a kid. I have journals from when I was 12 years old. Uh, that are full of stuff I don't even know what I'm talking about. Have you ever done, like, you go back and read stuff from when you were fourth grade? You're like, who is Chris? I don't even know what the, like, you have no idea. But I love that. And I love that I have sort of like tubs of them and store in a storage unit somewhere. Yeah, as an adult, I got away from it, sometimes I won't pick it up for a year, but then I'll go back and, like, it's just in spurts. And I'm pretty regular about it the last couple of years. When I say yet regular, I mean, like, at least once a week. I kind of sit down. It's my thing with my coffee. My mom, whenever we were bugging her with anything, she would always be like, I'll do it with my coffee. Like, her coffee time in the morning was like her focus time and everything. So I think I sort of got that from her. I also like, I like dream journaling also, like writing down my dreams. If I am trying to do that before you forget everything, it's like trying to think of tricks to remember them. Yeah, so it's a lot of writing, but my visual stuff and my verbal are very not connected. So I love what you're doing, because I've always been too afraid to connect them somehow. It's very weird. I mean, I do not draw in my journals. I do not. Now, visually, the way I lay down the words and the spacing and stuff, that's personal to me. And I think that's an important part about journaling, even if it's words. Like, it's very different than typing something. I don't use the computer to do it. The words have to have a certain size and a certain, I have to be able to express how I feel with the handwriting, I guess. But I don't draw.
Yeah, no, it happens. It's been really fascinating seeing how people have these like different silos for different
Yes.
places that they express themselves also.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
the class is
interesting.
called like visual journaling, but
Mhm.
it's sort of like a framework for a space where you just, get intimate with yourself and just use that to find a freedom that's useful in
Mhm.
or is life to you.
Absolutely. It is, and it is that freedom that you're talking about that is, that's so important. And that where people get, there's always a place where you get stuck and like, oh, I can't do that. And it's really great. Before, those things used to, kind of intimidate me, but I think I'm to the point now where it's like, oh, you have to seek those things out. You have to go after that stuff that makes you terrified. You have to go after it.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, I was gonna ask you, what do you do when you're like feeling stuck or afraid to work in your journal, but it sounds like you're chasing after those.
Yeah, if it's hard to write down, you better start writing it down. The only thing about the journal, though, I don't know if this comes up ever. I just thought of this, but the block that I have there is, what if somebody else reads it? I'm always like, oh my gosh, I hope I know when I'm gonna die so I can burn all these, like, before. like like how personal do you get? Like, it's, if somebody, like, and only because I have kids, I don't care what anybody else thinks, but I was like, oh my god, I don't ever want my children to see this. So a lot of times I write sort of in a codified way, so that, like, only I will know what I'm talking about, type of thing. Or yeah, that's the only, because I think you're sort of, bearing yourself in a way that in art you can always hide it under something, most of the time. um, but with words you can't. I mean, you can, but I don't know. You
Yeah,
get you get a little specific with words.
there's I forgot the artist's name, and one artist would write in cursive backwards to sort
Oh
of
my gosh!
hide
Wow.
his writing, and
That's interesting.
mhm. Those are probably
Good
published
trick.
books now, so he's lost his privacy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So you just have to. I don't think anybody would want to. publish any of my garbage, but yeah, I mean, I'll just have to lock them away somewhere, throw away the key.
You know, I actually found my grandpa's journals from when he was maybe in his 70s and 80s. And
Mhm.
he got really into numerology. So it was
Huh.
interesting to see him sort of like break down ideas and interpret it meaning out of numbers. And I thought
Wow,
he did
that's really cool.
it was very, very interesting. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it was my way of like getting to know him a little bit. And I mean, you're right, it is an invasion of privacy. So there I had a sense of guilt looking at it, but I honestly
Mhm.
didn't think that he like cared about his grandchildren at a certain
Yeah.
point in his life. He also had Alzheimer's. But I
Mhm.
saw that he was using numerology to like with my sister and my names to like
Oh, wow.
some sort of understanding. So it was interesting.
Well, I think that brings up a good point though, because that's one of the things, I think about that in the back of my mind, like, oh, what if someone reads this? But at the same time, I think you kind of also write with an idea that, well, what if they do? What if they do read it? Like, I also kind of want to, it's sort of your side of the story, your opportunity to tell your perspective. And I kind of think of it, I try not to be too influenced by that, but I also do think of, well, what if my kids did read it? What would I want them to know about my experience? And um, it reminds me too of the fact that my sister, my sister's like 4 years younger than me, and when I went away to college, like we were super super close, and when I went away to college, like she was devastated and felt like I had like abandoned her. And um, reading my journals where she said was like the thing that got her through high school, because she was like, you were gone, I didn't know, I didn't have anybody to turn to, I didn't have anybody to give me advice, and she was like, your journals like were the one thing that sort of got me through it all. And I was like, what? I was totally shocked by that, because I didn't ever think that it would be useful for anyone. But just the fact that she said that, I was always like, huh, but I guess you never really know what kind of effect it could have, or how it could help someone, that is going through the same things you went through. So
Wow, that's really true. It kind of stinks that there was that boundary crossing, but it's very compassionate of you to like honor that it helped her.
yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I was just kind of surprised because, like I said, I never, you just don't think of that when you're doing it, so
I know when I was a kid, I actually looked for my mom's journal. It's like
did you?
I did.
So did your mom, did everybody in your family kind of have that habit as well?
No, no, my mom, she wrote I found one of her journals and she didn't write that many entries, so
Oh, okay,
um,
okay.
or maybe she has a better hiding spots, but I'm not aware of any.
Oh, that's funny.
But I guess
Yeah, my mom never did that. My mom rejected all of that. Like, I can't write, I can't draw, I can't do anything creative. She was like, I can't do anything creative. And I'm like, it's not necessarily true. You're one of the most creative people I know. It's very weird how people just decide they're not creative. It's very odd. I don't understand. I'm like, no, you're living and breathing and you have created a life around you. You are creative in some way, shape, or form. You've created something.
yes,
You
I'm
can't, you can't, yeah, we can't get through the day without creating anything. Sorry, that doesn't happen.
thanks so much for sharing your work and
Sure. Yeah.
some of the heart behind it, for sure.
Mhm.
Is there any last remark that you wanted to close with?
Um, I will tell, yeah, I will mention my show, which is similar a little bit to what you saw, to what I showed. Maybe you'll have it, it'll give you some, what you saw here will give you kind of some insight when you see it. It's at Offsite Gallery in MacArthur Center until January 8th, and it's called Portuguese Playground, and they are works that I created during a 2-week art residency in Portugal in a village about an hour and a half outside of Lisbon. And it was a lot of fun. And I really love these works because they have a really kind of sunny, upbeat, playful kind of spirit to them. So hope you'll enjoy it.